All right, well, we are right on time, so I'm gonna get us started because I know you guys have a lot.
You are comfortable. You're going to be here for 3 hours.
Good morning, everybody. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Welcome to the Berks History Center. I appreciate you all coming out. I appreciate the folks at home on our camera back there. This is a really exciting presentation. I've known of the Chris collection for a very long time. And so it's really exciting to be able to see it in person, especially the Berks County quilts. So a quick background.
Make an entrance.
A quick background about Arlen and Pat, our hosts for today. They live in Berks County, PA. Arlen is a tax accountant with an office in Kutztown, and together they collect and study quilts, documenting their historical significance. The Chris collection is dedicated to preserving the heritage of antique quilts. They've published works featuring quilts from their collection, and quilt patterns have been developed from pieces they stored. Arlen and Pat are members of the American Quilt Study Group, Quilters Hall of Fame, Lehigh Valley Quilt Study Group, Mid-Atlantic Quilt Study Group, Midwest Fabric Study Group, and the Baltimore Applique Society. I hope I got all of them. I might be missing a few. They've curated exhibits across the country, including at the New England Quilt Museum, National Quilt Museum, American Quilters Society, Virginia Quilt Museum, and Vermont Quilt Festival. Through lectures and exhibitions, Arlen and Pat are dedicated to preserving the legacy of quilts and sharing quilting's rich history. So I am so excited to have you both here today, and I will turn it over to you.
Well, the sale has gone.
Thank you. Okay, so this just clips?
Clips wherever you like, so our folks at home can hear you.
While she's getting ready, I'd like to tell a little story. Just
I'm gonna sit a while.
you can sit along. Yeah, I'll lecture about an hour and a half, and then the quilts about another hour and a half. So 3 hours we'll be out of here. So, but there was a young man learning to want to be in the ministry, and he lived in the West Coast, California, but he wanted to tour the country first. So the first church he visited, he went in there, and there was a phone. It was a sign, and it said, "Direct call to God for 1 minute, $10,000." And so he thought, well, that's very unusual. And as he traveled east, he saw this in numerous churches, and never thinking much of it. And he found his way. Found his way in Pennsylvania, and he ended up in Berks County, and his car had broken down in Kempton, and so he went to the Bachman's garage, and while they were working on it, he went to the hotel there to have some lunch, and he asked, is there a church in the area? He said, oh yeah, there's a New Bethel Church back in Eckville towards Hawk Mountain. And he wanted to make sure he got there. He wanted to see that country church. And while he was there, he walked into the vestibule, and pastor, they were getting ready for the choir and everything. And he saw a sign there, phone to call God, but it was 25 cents. So he was curious, and he asked the pastor, what's going on here? I traveled the country, and every place I went, it was $10,000 to be able to talk to God. And he said, young man, you're in God's country. It's a local call. I'm leading with that because I think Pennsylvania Germans, the immigrants that spoke German, they weren't necessarily from Germany, but that's a whole different story, ended up coming up into this area. They were pushed against the Blue Mountains because the English, back in the 1860s, had already established themselves in Philadelphia in the surrounding area. So these German-speaking immigrants, the ones that settled, from what my studies and so forth and reading, and I'm not a historian as such, but they, in this area, they were actually from Switzerland. The German-speaking immigrants, Germany wasn't a country, so most of them came from the lower part of Germany, France, But there were quite a few that from Switzerland, and my ancestors actually came from Switzerland and settled up in the area where we live. We live in Albany Township, which is the very tip of Berks County, up against the Blue Mountains, and I'm sure most of you have heard of or maybe been to Hawk Mountain, which is back in they call it Eckville back in the egg. But anyway, I do want to read to you. There's a book published by Winterthur, and it has to do with paint, pattern, and people, and it has to do with furniture. But there's an introduction in there and some statistics I would like to share. The chapter 1 starts people, the great mixed multitude. And there was a Lutheran schoolmaster by the name of Middelburg who traveled to America in 1750 and returned to Germany 4 years later. He published an account, and he talks about offering some insight into the region's great ethnic and religious diversity. He commented, and I quote, "Pennsylvania is the heaven of the farmers, the paradise of the mechanics, and the hell of the officials and preachers." And the reason being was there was such a diversity of religion, and actually this became the melting pot of Pennsylvania. Statistics also in this book. There was a census in 1790 taken, and Pennsylvania's population at the time was 308,000 people. It's hard to believe that so few people living in Pennsylvania at that time. The German-speaking people amounted to 33%. This is for the whole state. English, 37%, and Scotch-Irish, 23%. But when you start to look at the counties, and then as to where were these German-speaking immigrants settling in, Berks County led the list by 85% of those in Berks County spoke German. And Lancaster was second with 72%. So you can see the majority of them had settled up in this area. There was another book actually published by the quotes from the State Museum of Pennsylvania. And it's called Saved for the People of Pennsylvania. And I just want to read one paragraph in here because it kind of introduces the quilts. This is actually chapter 6. William Penn's policy of toleration led to immigration by people of different cultures and religions, making Pennsylvania the original American melting pot. These ethnic groups borrowed freely from one another, creating a rich social and artistic environment. While quilt making was not a part of the German tradition, the Amish, Mennonite, Lutheran, and other Pennsylvania German religious groups quickly mastered the craft they had learned from their English neighbors and stamped it with their own aesthetic and sensibility, marked by strong colors and innovative designs. So that's what you're going to be seeing with these Berks County code. We focused on just Berks County for this presentation. It's the first time we've done that. So with that being said, I would like to open up with a coverlet. It's not a quilt, but the Germans, prior to them making quilts, their choice of bed cover were coverlets, which we're going to show you here. Very popular, especially in this area, in eastern Pennsylvania, and even more so, I think, Berks County and Lancaster and the surrounding counties. It's not that coverlets weren't being made elsewhere. Now, these are loomed. It's not quilted. But you find coverlets, if they came out of New Jersey and New York, they're probably blue and white and do not have fringes. But the Pennsylvania Germans love color. And you can see that in this quilt with the blue, white, the green. We have coverlets that actually have cheddar, that nice orange color, and you're going to see some of that in the quilts. And I think the women, because it's mainly made by men, not all, but they were professional loomers, But with the women, when they started quilting, and again, there were men quillers, but again, mostly women, they took what they saw in the coverlets and then often would use those designs in the quilts also. Okay, so with that being said, you're allowed to take pictures as long as it's for your own use. And is there anything else?
I don't know yet.
You don't know yet. Okay. Well, okay. So
It comes to me as we move.
you're going to help me hold up stage, and I think we have two other gentlemen that are going to help when we show that quilt. They'll take it over here and fold it so we can go on to the next. So
I'll give you your first lesson when we bring the first quilt down, or the coverlet, I should say.
be on that side, thank you. And we have them. This is the top. The top typically did not have fringes because it would get in the way with the facial hair and whatever for the men. But then we can. A lot of these are big.
As you can see on the bottom left-hand corner, it has, let's see, the C. Lokman, Hamburg, Berks County, 1836. He was a loomer in Hamburg, Pennsylvania. He had a son that followed in the profession as well after he was slowing down a bit, like I know we are. At least I thought so.
And it was made in two pieces, and they were really good at putting it together. But there's a seam right here going down through. So and I want to bring the cards, the jacquard. They're all made with the jacquard was the type of coverlet that became was about 1830s, 40s. It created more designs and more color they could add to the quilts. Okay, well, you want to?
Okay.
Yep. Oh, sorry.
All you can do is just take the bottom to the top, and then fold them, lay them over there.
Yep.
And then we'll package them later. The other thing I want to, if there are any questions regarding the quilt when we're showing it, please ask. Then that way we
Yeah,
can
so if you
look at
just lay them over
it,
and then,
maybe answer your questions.
no,
If there's
just
any
leave it straight.
personal questions are.
And that's what
save
you'll
that
do with the
to
quilts
the
as
end.
well.
Okay.
Okay.
I do have a
All
question.
right.
Yeah. Remember that.
Well, I'm close by.
That was,
Linen, typically they were made out with the fiber linen and cotton. Wool was not, I'm not saying not usually cotton. They would have had that as farmers. Often the professional loomers were also farmers, and the raw materials would have been available to make the coverlets. I saw the museum has a beautiful coverlet I saw over here also. I'll let Pat talk about this one.
Oh, this is a bride's quilt. This came out of the Hoke family estate, and we found out that it was actually made for Sally Ann Minker, who was married in 1855. This particular quilt is a whole cloth, and they used their expert needlework to do this quilting. You have lovebirds on here. A lot of it signifies that it was actually made for a bride. We were fortunate enough to also obtain her wedding dress, which we have, and her bonnet, and some shawls, and some of her petticoats, they called them. What's really beautiful about the petticoats, one of them is quilted, and the other one has a really fancy bottom pleating that perhaps may have stood out underneath a dress that she wore for a little bit more fanciness. The quilt itself has about 10 stitches per inch, and it's just beautifully done. I realize it's difficult to see that from where you're sitting, so you're just going to have to believe me.
often the wedding quilts will have a center medallion to it, which is very similar to what the earlier quilts prior to the early 1800s, late 1700s, the English style quilts with the medallion style.
I'm going to mention also that the Historical Society here, Berks County, had a documentation that they did in the early 90s, 1990s, and that was actually part of the documentation. Okay, before Kevin falls off the stage, this doesn't have to be up here. Sorry about that. And I'm turning my phone off too while I'm here.
This is a very special quilt, an inscribed or signature quilt. And this one actually has traveled. This was shown in Japan. We actually have another quilt that was part of that group that went over to Japan, and Todd has the information on that.
All right, this is the center block has Rebecca Reitenauer, Irtepic 1859, which basically means cover or quilt. And it was exhibited in Tokyo, Japan in 1994. It was part of a traveling exhibition that was going on. It's also in a book called Lest I Shall Be Forgotten. There are a number of names that are inscribed on this quilt, and it was previously owned by Dennis and Linda Moyer. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of them, but there are 30 blocks with names.
What was the date of the quilt?
It was 1859.
59.
And the name of this is called The Flying Crow. The gal that wrote the book, Lest I Shall Be Forgotten, with her husband, Nancy and Donald Rowan, it didn't have a name. And generally, the quilts that were made during that time period didn't have names. They just saw it somewhere else and they made one for themselves. It's later that names were attached to quilts. She decided to name this Flying Crow and it stuck. So when you see this particular design, it is called the Flying Crow.
You also notice the color on these quilts. The Pennsylvania Germans, once we got into the fourth quarter of the 1800s after the Civil War, rarely do you see white in their quilts. Where in the English quilts, they would have been using a white background. The back of the quilt might have been white. You're not going to see that here in these Pennsylvania German quilts. So the question.
And done, so there's nothing sewed on the machine.
What you have seen up to this point, yes, was all hand done.
Yes.
And do you know the significance of the names on the quilt?
Family, I know there's family names on there, I think including the parents. They were, I'm thinking, we have another pair.
You're thinking of a different quilt.
What's that?
I did not research these names. We have so many name inscribed quilts, and it never fails when I start researching on ancestry.com on a name or two I fall into this rabbit hole. You know how hard it is to get out of that rabbit hole? I have not researched all of the quilts that have signatures or inscriptions on them, but
I do want to mention that these inscribed quilts became very popular 1840s. People were starting to travel. The West started to open up, the gold rush, and people were moving. So their friends would get together, doing a signature on an inscribed quilt, so that to the person that was leaving, figuring they'd probably never see them again. So as a remembrance. So we see a lot of these patterns, and especially, which we'll show later, be a rolling stone pattern, very popular with the Pennsylvania Germans, and there were a lot of them made because people were on the move, were traveling, and friendship quilts and so forth. Question?
Names, are they inked on or liquid on?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
The names, I think they're inked on.
Yes, they're inked on.
Some,
Yes.
yeah, sometimes they'll use stamps. You could buy stamps. And then put the letters in, so it's stamped or stamped, and they could write in there. Or you see Bible verses sometimes. It's just all different kinds, but not on that quilt.
Your question was ink versus thread. Yes, yeah, it was ink. Yeah. This is called the Ohio Star, circa 1850. It was previously owned by Layla Shankwaller, and it was passed on to her daughter, Grace Riggle. I'm going to share names because I think some of you might be familiar with the names from this area. But on the label, it said Mrs. John Shankwaller, who was a husband to Layla.
Again, notice the brown printed fabric on the back, very popular with the Germans. They love the brown printed fabric.
Isn't that a luscious pink? But there's a little surprise that comes with this.
This one, the Pennsylvania Germans, often when people ask, the quilts are kind of square. They say, well, the beds are usually longer. Why didn't it won't cover the pillows? They would often make pillowcases. You can hold that one. It's rare that you can find the pillowcases that go with the quilt. Usually they get lost, but we have a matching pair of pillowcases that go with that quilt. And again, I said it's hard to find them. Sometimes you'll find one, but not the other one. And again, the brown printed fabric on the back.
Please ignore those little cards that are hanging from the back. They're just our inventory.
Again, the color on the back of this quilt is a brown with pink. Very colorful quilts. This is your typical 4-patch, but its own point.
Now, I will say that it's being shown sideways because it's so long. We were trying to avoid it not dragging. It's circa 1870, and it's a 4-patch pattern. What's so endearing is there was a note attached to it that said, Grandma Swaisley, age 5, made the patches, and great-grandma Golden Kaufman put it together. Can you imagine a 5-year-old putting those? And that was, of course, all hand done as well.
You saw the blue in there. You're going to see some more of that. Again, the English would probably not have had blue in there. It would have been white. But their love of color, the blue fabric, well, we'll talk about that when we get to it in these other quilts. If I don't, remind me.
You won't forget.
This would be a 9-patch. Again, a very popular design.
All right, this is circa 1870. Came from Dorothy Balthaser from Centerport, Berks County. That's all we know. Sometimes when we buy from dealers, we're just lucky to get any names out of them. For some reason, they're afraid we go into their territory and try to buy right from the family, which isn't our intent, but this one, as you said, also has the bars backing.
There's a brown printed fabric also.
Now, when they did bars backing, it was planned. Some people think it may have just been pieces that were left over, and that wasn't the case. They would plan their backings. Fabrics generally came in about 22 to 24 inches wide, and in that case, they were probably just cut in half and creating those bars on the back. Sometimes they're narrow bars, just means they cut them a little more, half and half and half. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, this one has that, it's a double dye blue. In modern times, we call it Lancaster blue because the dealers and people selling the fabric they can get more money for it because it has the name Lancaster in front of it. It was actually manufactured in New England. The English did not like it. It came through Philadelphia and the Germans loved it. You're going to see it on a lot of their quilts.
The name Lancaster was very marketable. So if it had the word Lancaster attached to it, people were willing to spend a little more because they thought it had more value. But it's really known in the history world as double blue. Okay, this is circa 1900, and it came out of the estate of Eli Hoke. He actually died in 2016. He was an early high school graduate and a clockmaker. And didn't have any children, unfortunately.
A lot of the quilts I was buying off of out of estates. And like I said earlier, the dealers typically don't want to give you the information. But when I go to an estate, I try to do research. I try to kind of interview the family to find out information because I know that that particular estate, they did not make the quilts if they were made in the 1800s. It would have been probably a great grandparent or something. So trying to follow back through, where did this quilt really come from? But a lot of the quilts stayed pretty much in the area where they were made. The family kept them till eventually they went to auction, especially, and I often say this, the kids today don't want old stuff. So these quilts end up being sold or dispersed. So, and I'm fortunate enough that maybe I'm lucky enough to be able to, buy some of these nice quilts. We do not do anything to these quilts. These are the way I buy them in the condition they are. And the reason some of these early quilts are in pristine condition, they were probably their best quilts, their heirloom quilts. Got stored, hardly ever used, maybe for special occasions. And that's why they're in such great shape. And I can talk more about auction. I'll talk more about an auction at the end of the show because I have some really neat quilts at the end.
I do have a question. How many quilters are in here? Okay, so how many quilts do you make and just put aside because you're not using them? Or do you use them all? No, I don't do that. So I have, it's going to be the same case for us. I'll have all of these unused, or I put them on our bed, but take them off every night. So I don't call that using them. Oh, I'm sorry. Now I'm talking about me.
That happens occasionally.
Yeah.
I want to show the back of this one because the next couple of quilts, you're going to see a lot of bar quilts. Again, the English would not have done this, but the Pennsylvania Germans, especially in that fourth quarter of the 1800s, from Berks County and especially Albany Township, where we're from. If I go to a local auction and there are quilts there from the late 1800s, I pretty well guarantee you 80–90% are going to have bars in the back. If they're from northern Berks County, in our area, again, where the Swedish, German-speaking people from Switzerland, I should say, settled. And this is very typical. Pink and green were probably their most favorite colors.
All right, this is circa 1870, and it's called the Irish Chain. It came from the estate of John and Dorothy Grice and was actually bought out of an auction. I don't know if any of you have heard of the auctioneer David Loeb. He had an auction in Kutztown.
The other thing I want to mention with the pink and green, these are also a double print, like the blue, double dye. And they were so popular that they printed these fabrics, the pink and green, in various different prints, but designs for over 100 years. So it can be hard to date a quilt just looking at the pink and greens. You have to start looking at other fabric. And when she says circa, because we don't know the date, but we have to look at, okay, when could it have been made? When was that fabric available? And then you look at the history and the style and so the make and so forth to try and come up with a date. Again, here we have the bars on the back of this one. This Beautiful blue, double dye blue and yellow print.
I think the blue and yellow looks so fresh.
Mm.
All right, this is circa 1870, and it's a 9-patch. We have it here, 9-patch square and a square.
But starting to see the cheddar now, which they often will use as their fourth or fifth favorite color in a quilt.
Okay, now I will say that cheddar again is a new term. It used to be chrome orange in the 1800s, but cheddar is a 20th century term, I'm going to say. When we actually lectured up in Vermont and we pointed out the cheddar color, and they said, but our cheddar cheese isn't that color. Our cheddar cheese is white. So that was actually from the estate of Bill Peters, who I believe was out of Lenhartsville. And this might have been his little baby quilt.
This is another one from that same estate, Bill Peters. But look at the back. He barred both sides. They would make quilts where the front is just bars. And people often think, well, why would you do that? But tell you what, you put it on your bed, it really does look nice having the bars.
And you can make them quickly.
This is true too.
Yep, you just sew the seams together.
This is unusual to see this color combination without a third color, but they love that blue.
This is circa 1890, called Streak of Lightning, came from the estate Sarah Yost of Shoemakersville. Has 11 bars backing. Sarah died at the age of 93. Her parents were Howard Jacob Yoder, and she worked in the family business. They had the Yoder Meat Market in Shoemakersville. And then she later on, with her husband, began the Yost Food Market, which began in 1948 in Shoemakersville. So they stayed in the area. The Yost stayed in the area.
Again, bars on the back.
And they too did not have any children.
You found any information about why the backs of the quilts are so different in colors than the front? Was that deliberate, or was it just that was extra fabric, or
No, I think
that was so different?
they love color, and I think they wanted to use as much as they could. The fabrics for the backings for the bars would have been purchased. It wouldn't have been left over from something else. We have some quilts that have a totally different colored binding that we wouldn't even think of putting that on today. Well, at least I would not. I shouldn't speak for all of us, but they just wanted that extra splash of color. They felt the more color you had, the better the quilt was.
They never.
Good.
That I can't answer. I don't know, but I would assume that they did.
It does make a two-sided quilt that could have been used. Not often, but occasionally, I wondered, why the two-sided, and the one side is usually for fancy, and the other side is for plain. So depending on who the company was, that maybe decides which side of the quilt gets shown.
So if you went and had a striped backing, I'm sorry. They had the bars back.
These were plain people, very religious and plain, but this is the way they could decorate their beds. And if you know the Pennsylvania Germans, they decorated everything. Just go to a high-end auction in Lancaster County and see what some of their decorative pots and pans and crocks. A crock was just sold at Puck and Puck a month ago, and it had an elephant on the front, like a cobalt color, I guess. Broke records. It sold for $140,000 plus a 27% premium on top of that yet. So over $170,000 for a crock with an elephant on.
And you know what I always say? If you drop the quilt on the way to the car, it doesn't break. But you drop that crock and then it's not
It's
worth anything.
unbelievable what things are selling for was being made. And again, even if they're great, their tombstones have, or if you go in an old cemetery, have decorations on, just everything. It's just amazing. But unfortunately, the quilts weren't getting the recognition, that the women were making. And we collected, to me, this is art. And if I have the time, we'll talk about it later.
I will add on to that. The bride's quilt I showed, or we showed earlier, that was all white. Those particular quilts were in the inventory listings during the 1800s. But if you have a patchwork quilt, they weren't even listed because they weren't considered valuable, where that whole cloth white quilt was. All right, this is circa 1880, and it's called Grandmother's Pride. It came from the estate of Harold and Marie Gressley. They are both buried at the Huffs Church, the Huffs Union Church. I actually was confirmed at that church. So we should go back and look them up. Well, find their graves, I guess I could say.
This really works nice being on a stage because the quilts are so long. It's hard to show them at other places because they end up on the floor, and this is nice.
Yeah, this is a beautiful setup to do this. And we've got two great guys that fold like experts.
This log cabin quilt has an interesting story to it.
Now, oftentimes, generally when you see a log cabin, the center block is solid, and red tends to be the favorite color that they gravitate to because it represents the hearth. This case, it's split. They're two different colors, which is unusual. What's really unusual about this, it was found at the Walbert's lumber mill in Hancock, Mertztown, in an oval cardboard crate or barrel in one of the lumber storage buildings. Nobody knew it was there.
And it was in the bottom of the auctioneer told us they found it in the bottom of the barrel. And again,
It's exquisite.
pristine condition.
I thought there was writing on one of the blocks, but I guess it's a floral strip of fabric.
Well, if there is, we missed it, but we'll look when we put it away.
All the colors just pop out. The use of color, I just think, is amazing.
And if I remember correctly, he was checking out. He had been at that auction, was checking out, and they held up this quilt. And he decided it needed to come home with him. I don't go to auctions. I'm not allowed to. I am an emotional bidder. So I get so excited and my hand just stays up. So
My hand comes down, hers was going up. And I said, you realize it's coming out of the same pocket.
well, I have been called the auctioneer's delight. So I can go preview, but then I have to stay home when he goes to the auction. But we talk about what would be good and what wouldn't be good and what I think you really need to come home with, that kind of thing. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but.
Question.
Question about the backing again. So some of these striped fabrics, were they considered fabrics that they would have also been using for dresses at that time?
Yes.
Okay, so that also tells a period story.
Yes.
Yeah, it was dress fabric for the most part.
Good question.
Yeah, they weren't, as you get into the 1900s, then you see the feet sack type backings, they use that fabric sometimes, yeah.
And would that have been made in Pennsylvania or was that from England?
Probably at this time, by that fourth quarter. The English controlled the textile industry up until about 1830s. So it was very expensive, but the mills up in New England started to make fabric. The technology became available where they had roller presses. They could make a lot of colored fabric quick compared to hand stamping or stenciling. And plus the imported stuff was expensive. Beautiful, beautiful fabric, but very expensive. Only the rich could afford it. By the time we got to, this time period that these quilts were being made, and a lot of them were being made, especially that fourth quarter, it was just like it's just unbelievable, all the quilts that we find at auctions. Yeah, the fabric would have been available, and they could afford it. These farms, mostly, it was very rural. These farms have been in the family for multi-generations, and they probably had no debt, and they had fairly good income, and these were hardworking people. So they could afford the fabric at that time. The price came really down after the Civil War.
But yes, Pennsylvania did have mills as well that produced fabrics.
But most of the fabric would have been coming up through Philadelphia on the eastern side of the
Susquehanna?
river.
Is it Susquehanna?
Susquehanna. Once you get over into York and those counties over there, a lot of that fabric was actually coming up from Baltimore because there was a difficulty of getting across the river. We didn't have the interstates and the bridges we do today. But in studying quilts, we find there's a difference once you get into those counties.
How long ago was the quilt found in the barrel at the Berks home?
2011.
So when it closed. Oh,
I'm sorry.
so when
Oh, I'm not sure when that happened, but that would make sense. They were cleaning out the outbuildings and found this barrel with a quilt in it.
And were there any family names connected to that?
No.
Because Hancock is very small
Mhm.
and some of my ancestors, grown names, lived right there.
Okay. Yeah. If you blink while you're driving through, you missed it. Yeah. No, there was, the only thing that was on it, and I don't know if I should share this, but they put it out on a line to air out before taking it to auction, and a bird pooped on it. So that's all that was on it when we got it.
You didn't know that.
Yeah, things like that I remember. All right, this is circa 1890, and this is called the Courthouse Steps. And this was from the estate of Florence Schultz, who was never married, lived in Boyertown. And her parents are all buried at the Palm Schwenkfelder Church Cemetery. That too is so luscious.
It's just amazing. And you look at the back fabric there, it's also the stripes.
So this one has 11 bars on the back. Can we refer to that as bar hopping?
Yes.
it's not a different way.
This is one of my favorite star quilts. This,
Oh, yes.
when we had the opportunity, we bought it privately. It didn't go through an auction or anything. And so we got some of the history that goes with it. But the colors is just absolutely. This young girl that made this was way beyond her years.
1881, an eight-pointed star, and it came out of Reading, and it was made by Katie Seidel at the age of 16. Katie was born August 9th of 1865 and died June 14th, 1955. But that is, to me, it's stunning.
You think who thought of using cheddar and putting it with the fabrics, the pink and just.
And by this time period, there were sewing machines available, but this was still all hand pieced.
And it has bars backing.
Yeah, that one has 12 bars on the backing.
I mentioned about the Rolling Stone and being signature or inscribed quilt. We have two here that were made by two sisters, or for two sisters, I should say.
Now, this one has some wear. This one had been used, but it's 1870 and it's a frock. It's a Proctor quilt. We actually had the Bible, the family Bible that came with this one, but we didn't bring that along. The center block has dated 1870, Ida Merkel, and it's signed by an artist, Williams Gross. Now, when I say artist, he did the writings. He was a scrivener. They actually went from home to home to do baptisms, birth certificates, marriage certificates. When you see those, all that fancy writing on those older documents, it was generally a paid scrivener that did that. And that's exactly who this person was. William Gross was well known as doing this type of work.
And he made two quilts. The next one you're going to see, they reversed the pink and yellow. Other than that, it's the same type of quilt.
And some of the names, I don't have all the names listed on the second quilt, but I have all the names of the first quilt listed here. But some of them were the same, so it was a crossover. And again,
What's
1870.
amazing is we bought the first quilt from a dealer. 5 years later, we got this one from a private collection. And now they're both together.
I know it's hard to see, but there's a little extra writing and design on that center block. That one was Susanna Merkel, but it was 1870. And our friend William Grossman was busy again. And this one had 11 bars in the backing. Sometimes they would attach a separate piece of fabric for their bindings. Sometimes they would bring the backing and roll it to the front, and that would be their binding, or front and roll it to the back, or a knife edge. We do have a knife edge. I'll have to point it out if I remember which one it is. That's where you bring your back and your front together, you fold it in, and you whip stitch it all the way around.
This is the, you have to reverse.
I'm sorry? Oh, yeah, that's not easy to keep it straight. All right, this is really exciting. We have two bullseye quilts. This one belongs to the Berks History Center. I have to take a break because I need pictures.
To talk about the bullseye quilt is a regional quilt, and there's only about a dozen known examples of
A lot
it.
of close-ups and
And
when you
most
hold
of them, they came out of the Lenhurst.
I'm sorry.
This one, I believe, the Historical Society
Edinburgh.
knows who made it.
It was Sarah Heinley out of Edinburgh.
Actually, it was published.
He doesn't hear me at home either. Okay, I'm gonna squeeze
The
over here.
Historical Review of Berks County, published in winter of 92, 93. And I have a copy of it here. They did a quilt documentation for Berks County, and this was part of it. And it's in here in the book, actually the centerfold. Sharon,
Well, it would be, it's the same quilt.
I know,
Oh.
it's in the center of the book.
Oh, never mind. I thought you were saying it was this,
She didn't get her hearing in.
I'm going Tuesday.
But it has a maker is Sarah A. Heinley, Hinly, Edinburgh, which is just outside of Lennoxville, coming up into Hamburg. And it's actually dated. Oh no, I'm thinking of another quilt. Sorry about that. Pieced and applique collection of the Historical Society. Unusual, difficult pattern to execute. Only one other quilt of this pattern was seen. And that's when they did the quilt documentation. So there has not been another quilt documentation since then.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to hold it like halfway so it doesn't drag. And may I have you just stand over here
Or-
so we can kind of compare
The two.
the two?
So we'll show you the one that we had acquired. And this is the first time these
All
two
right.
quilts have been together. So this is quite historic.
So you can see there's a different color variation here. And there are some differences, but they're both just as charming. So this one has the double tulips. And that one has the tulips in the center, as you can see. So it's a little bit of a variation. And I'm sorry if you think I wasn't listening to you, but they generally all came out of the same area. This is what
Right.
was considered did you say that? Well, if they hear it twice, they won't forget it.
And what was the area?
The one that we have is circa wrong one. 1860, that time period. I'm sorry? Oh, area. Oh, this one came out of the Lenhartsville area as well.
In talking to the dealers that were aware of these quilts before we knew about them, they had said they were all found in the Lenhartsville area. But that can include Edinburgh, you know,
Tulip, what I call tulip flowers and circle trim, is that applicable?
The flowers are, yes. The flower, and what else you asked was applicate.
Squares and triangles that would probably be.
Hold it in
pieces,
half.
those Circles application also.
so they can see it.
This,
Yes.
uh, it actually could be, oh, where'd you go? Oh,
I'm just.
It could-
Want to be in the way.
well, coming, but it looks like it could be inlaid. I don't think this was,
That's inlaid, you can tell by the
Right,
way
right,
it's ditched on top.
but that would have been appliqued.
Yeah, and the tulips.
Yes, yeah,
So, just check.
all right.
And the round circles then, are they pieced into the quilt or is it applicated onto?
No, they were pieced.
You could use those.
And this is,
But the circular part that I'm just trying to
Well-
wrap my head around that.
well, to me, that's a masterpiece because to have it lay flat,
You put it on that top.
they didn't have the tools that we have today.
First of all,
This is on my bucket list. I reproduce a lot of our antique, and this is on my bucket list. I hope I live long enough because it's going to be challenging. Okay, let me, well, okay, I missed that one. But that's all right. It's
I
going
think,
home with
to
me.
tell you the truth, I think this is probably the first ones that was made.
In that we have another one, and when we had it on exhibit
This is on
at
that top.
Hershey at Quill Odyssey, we had one that we had exhibited and the other one we took to the appraiser to have it appraised. And she came down to look at, I don't know which one we had hanging. And she brought to our attention that they were quilted exactly the same way. So we're guessing that they were both made by the same individual or a very close person and they helped each other quilt it, but the quilting was exactly the same.
Yeah, same pattern, same stitches per inch. So we think possibly the same person made both of those. And I was curious how many others then did one person make a couple of them? Again, there's only like less than a dozen known examples. There's one down in North Carolina in a museum. We drove down there to see that and we took our quilt with. We wanted to compare the two. They wouldn't let us bring ours into the museum. So
The reason being, the curator that I had been in touch with just happened to not come that day. So we left it in the car and we just took pictures in. But yeah, the curator, there were mixed signals there, but We got to see it. That's part of the Bressler collection. So,
You tell them about Florence Pito.
oh, well, the one quilt that we purchased from a dealer was out of Florence Pito's collection, which is, she was very instrumental in getting the quilts together for the Shelburne Museum up in Vermont. So, and that's one that the quilting matches the other. I thought there was a question.
No, we were there. I that museum a few years ago.
Yeah, that's pretty. I don't know that they have the swinging quilts anymore. I think they changed things. It's not, you don't get to see as many when you go, and that's all we used to go to see. Oh, definitely. So, okay.
We have another regional quilt from the Lenhartsville, again, this area. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but there's only a handful of these known to exist also.
Now, this one didn't have a name either. However, on the front of that periodical that came out of,
Here,
oh,
there's a picture on the front of the quilt that they had with the
Historical Review of Berks County.
Yeah.
It's right on the, I was here one time and they had leftover magazines in their gift shop. And that was one of them. And I thought, oh, that's going home with me. But they referred to it as a snowflake. And it does look like a snowflake, but Arlen has renamed it. Do you want to?
Real.
The Berksy Reel, because these were found in the area where the Berksy train used to run up to Slavington to take children to get their high school education. His mother went on that, and you know what? Nobody ever talks about what happened on that train. It was one of those, what happens on the train stayed on the train.
Well, in my day with the bus, what happened on the bus stayed on the bus too, commuting back and forth. But what's neat about these, there is a variation in some of them. The four corners typically is an it's a same type of pattern. But what they did in between them is a different style. And the other quilts have the same pattern. The only difference, the center sometimes is a third design. Now, this particular one, I think, mimics
That's different.
different. It is different. This one is different. This has the third type.
We have some that the four corners and the center are all the same design, all the same applique pattern. And then the alternating ones are the same as well, as in addition to having the same fabric. So, but
And actually, this one is the same style as this. The center is completely different. This quilt is actually dated 1900.
well, we had this one circa 1890. You must have based that on the fabrics that were used.
Yeah, these quilts surface, like Pat said, kind of between Virginville up through Kempton along that railroad is where the dealers that we had learned a lot from and had collected from that area were from Leonardsville. And they had told us that these were only found in that area.
Now, did you see how creative they were on the bars on the backing of that one? I mean, it took some math and some thinking. They didn't have calculators back then. I mean, these women and men, we have some that were made by men. They were genius.
Okay, with that quilt documentation, with this quilt, they have here, the maker was Angelina Lookinbill Seidel from Virginville, dated 1900. And it was in the collection of Susan Kistler. Now, if anybody knows of Susan Kistler, I would love to talk, if she's still living, would talk to her about her collection. Because she might have more of the type of quilts that we have. But anyway.
We don't have any room.
This is another design that you don't see a whole lot of. It's kind of regional.
All right, this is circa 1890 and it's called the Cactus Rose. This is what you call paper cutting or Scherenschnitte. You know, when, do you remember folding papers and cutting it out and then you have a surprise snowflake? That was very popular with the Pennsylvania Germans. This one has 16 bars on the back. Okay, we have been here 1 hour.
Yeah.
That's okay. we can all stay.
Okay, all right.
Bright colors. She loves baskets.
I do love baskets, and every time I see one and I think we have to have it, he says we have enough baskets. But I oftentimes win. All right, this is circa 1900. Again, a basket quilt out of Berks County. Has 13 bars on the back, and it had a tag on the back, Minnie Zettelmoyer.
Yeah, it's this.
Since this tag was added,
This white
we do
strip.
not know if she just owned it or if she made it. You know,
Label.
yeah, it's a label. So it may have come down in her family, but I have my doubts that she's the one that made it. The 1900 census, she was 42 at that time, and she had 4 children. She was a widow, born in 1857. So it's possible that she made it. And somebody put the label on later. So there's a lot of iffies.
We have, Pennsylvania Germans love the schoolhouse quilts. But this is the only one I've seen in cheddar.
This one is stunning. Circa 1910, schoolhouse, and we call these jewel tones because they're so bright. It came out of the estate of Erla Baconstows from Mooresville. And
That particular auction I had gone to, and this was the only thing I wanted at that auction. I was interested in nothing else. Didn't the auctioneer put it up the last? I sat there all day waiting for this auction, and I saw who else was there. So I knew I wasn't going to get it cheap, but I was determined to go home with it. And
he became me for a day.
so we have it. But yeah, I had some competition on this one.
But we do know that it was made by Katie Boyer, which Boyer was her last name, which was her mother. He did get that information when he was there. And there was I'm surprised at how many of these quilts that we own that we found out through checking with genealogy that they didn't have children. You know, so there's not even anyone that we can go ask questions to. All right, these are circa 1870, a flying geese bars quilt. Came from the estate of Marie Jacob out of Hoof's Church. See, I'm back to my old stumping grounds again. That was another auction that he went to. But that wasn't the one I think you attended to purchase. It's the next one that you were after.
That auction, the quilts were down in the barn, and we're back. It was kind of dark. I couldn't really see them. So I didn't really get a good visual. But when they brought the quilts out to look at, because I hadn't seen this one, I didn't realize what it was till they hung it up and showed it. And I thought, I have to have that quilt. Sometimes you know when you have to have a quilt.
See, there's more of me in him than he knows.
It's because we didn't have one.
Okay, this is circa 1910. It's a Perkiomen Valley. They're generally 100 blocks, 25 by 25. And it's usually a split 9 patch where you have 9 blocks, 9 pieces of squares in a block. And the ones going down the center are split. One color one way, and Like here's a block right here. So they're split. And that's what makes, oh, wrong way. Sorry about that. Let me go down here.
Look at the top corner or whatever.
I can't reach the top corner.
Well, the line.
I'm going to say that the squares are half one color and half another. But they're placed strategically while some others are just solid squares or single squares.
Most of these quilts were actually found in Montgomery County. The Perkiomen Creek comes down out of Lehigh County down that way. But this particular estate was Huff's Church area, so that I think is still Berks County.
So Berks County can claim this quilt. And this was made by Annie Jacob, who was the mother to Marie Jacob, who the estate sale was for. He had a little, and I even have it attached here, a little cheat sheet. All the information he was getting.
Typically up till this time, this is about 2005 with our collection, I would pick up a quilt here and there. I didn't consider myself a collector of quilts. 2005, I started buying, realized I have a disease. And when I went to the auction, this particular auction, there were 3 pristine quilts there, and from the late 1800s, and a lot of from the 1900s, which I wasn't interested in. They were worn and used. But these next 3 are absolutely pristine. The fabric still has the sheen to it and everything. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's very obvious that these were not used. This is circa 1900, 1910, estate of Mary Schaefer, who was also an elementary school teacher. It was made by her mother, Leah Stauffer. And I think that's about all I have on her.
Very, very simple, but you mentioned about the back, different fabric. Look at the back of this one. I sometimes actually have gone to an auction. When I go and I'm interested, I think it's an old quilt, I want to see the back first. And I bought quilts just because of the back fabric. I didn't care what was on the front because it's so unusual. And this another one, the back fabric is just amazing.
Now, the question has been asked already, why dark or brown fabrics on the back? Arlen actually spoke to a Mennonite woman and asked her, and she said, well, you don't see the dirt on a dark backing.
They're a very basic pattern.
Yes, this is circa 1900, a 9-patch from the same estate of Mary Schaefer.
Okay.
This one had nice stitching as well. It was 8 to 9 stitches per inch.
There's one more from that estate.
This one, again, same time period, circa 1900, and also from the estate of Mary Schaefer. This is called Grandmother's Pride. And on the label, it said, for Mary Schaefer from Mother.
So her mother would have been the one that would have made these quilts.
And she wanted to make sure nobody else was going to get it. Oh, are you okay?
Oh, yeah.
We don't need any workman's compensation filed, so be careful of this corner. Are you going to talk about can I sit a while?
Yeah, you may sit. The next, yeah, these are the Omar.
Yeah. You're going to talk about the dam.
So we're going to show. I was at not at the auction. The dealer was there and bought the quilts and came right to us with them because they thought we might be interested. The history is the Omar, there was twin girls lived on their parents' farm where Blue Marsh now is. Their farm was leveled because of putting in the dam. And there was an auction then, sometime later, of course, it's fairly recent, where these 2 twin sisters made quilts. And we have 4 of them. I brought 3 along to show to you. But I don't know if you the history with the Blue Marsh, but the Omox farm, about 90 acres, and they had a quarry, limestone quarry, which was being used to extract and create lime for the farmers, for their fields. And in digging down through, the drills started to hit an empty spot. Here, they found a cave that was down in this quarry. And as they were extracting, more of the cave became exposed. Well, unfortunately, because of the dam, that they ended up trying to extract rocks and things out of the cave as best they could. I don't know if they used it in the dam or not, but and then closed it up. So that dam is now 25 feet underwater in the Blue Marsh, because their farm was completely consumed by the lake. So that's the history with the Omox. And again, there were the twin sisters. The one made, I think, 3 of the 4 quilts. So
That we have, yeah.
okay, you ready?
Well, that was a short break.
When they were proposing to do, it's because of the flooding. I don't remember the flood, but apparently there was a huge flood and a lot of lives lost, a lot of property damage. And the Department of Engineers came in and proposed dams for not only Pennsylvania, but all over. But there were 2 dams being considered in this area, and that was the Blue Marsh. I don't know, remember the name of the river, the stream, but also Maiden Creek was considered. And where they wanted to put it in Maiden Creek, it would have consumed, Virginville would have been lost, Leonardsville would have been lost, and there were 5 caves in that area that would have been lost. And the cost was like more than double to put that dam in as compared to where Blue Marsh is now. So there was a lot of locals, upset about this. And I remember it as a young person, there was talk of Leonardsville being flooded. They were going to be putting in a dam, and then it disappeared. You never heard anything after that. But because they decided then to do Blue Marsh instead.
See, I knew you weren't finished. All right, this is made by one of the twins, and we actually have, I'm going to say, an album that I created. We had gone to an exhibit, and
Let's hear.
you're welcome to look at it afterwards if you care to. We have pictures of the twins as young children and as young girls, and part of the information on the exhibit we went to see. This is called the Bars quilt. How clever. Circa 1890, and this was made by Verna Omoch. It's OHNMACHT. I believe the N is silent. If it isn't, then I'm misspelling it, I'm mispronouncing it, so I apologize. But when the dealer talked to us, she had actually talked to some family members, and that's how she was enunciating the last name. So
The exhibit.
now, one moment, please. This is an example where they rolled the front of the fabric to the back for the binding. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The exhibit had been at the Penn State branch outside of Reading. They had an exhibit on the Blue Marsh, and that's where we got this information. They had pictures and a lot of other farms and so forth, but they featured this the Omaha farm.
Okay, this is circa 1900. Her sister, Virgia, made one as well. I believe this one's a little bit larger. 79 by 82, the 75 by 93. No, the other one was larger.
Okay.
But I think they most likely made them at the same time.
Different background, unusual background.
And then Virgia decided to do some red work.
The third one is a heavy quilt and pencil marks for the quilting.
Okay, this one is actually dated 1928. Yeah, we tend to gravitate away from heavy pencil marks because to me, they're not overly attractive. There's some historians that like the pencil marks because it really accentuates the quilting.
In the center.
But red work was very popular during that time period because the red thread was color fast and it didn't bleed, it didn't fade. So they trusted it. They could do these little masterpieces knowing it would be there for a long, long time. But in the center is the date 1928 and her initials that she put in.
Yeah, once we get past around 1910, 1915, the Pennsylvania Germans' use of color disappears. And now you can't tell. They start to look all the same, the English and Pennsylvania quilts.
Okay, the next one is another Irish chain. This is circa 1890. And this came out of Landis Store. And it was the Moyer Family Trust, Harvey Moyer from Pike Township. His wife was Anna Kemp, but it was made by, Anna Kemp, and it was made by Emma Reichert Bechtel, who was Anne's great grandmother. Did you get all that?
I went to the auction. I want to talk a little bit about that. I love going to the old Pennsylvania farm auctions. That you didn't see any in the last 20 years. I'm talking about the multi-generational Pennsylvania, good old German farm auction. This auction came up and I was available. It was on a Saturday and I knew they were going to have quilts. It rained the day before and the night before.
Oh, yeah.
And but the day of the auction, it didn't. The place was a mud bath. The field, the one whole field above the house was filled with old, mostly wooden farm implements and pieces of implements. This farm had been in the generations for over 3-4 years in the family, and now it was being sold off. But so I was interested to see what quilts were going to be there. I went into the room up in the kitchen where I found where they had the quilts, and there was a woman guardian there watching them, and I talked to her. There was nobody there at the time. I asked, did the children get to pick out what quilts, what quilts are not here? She said no. She said they didn't want them, and I thought, oh, okay. And I'm going through. There was a lot of them there. Going through, I saw there were 4 or 5 from the that fourth quarter, 1800s that I was interested in. The other ones I was not. And there was a dealer there bidding, and she and I are always fighting each other. But I knew if there were 3 or 4 there, she was not going to get. And I brought them here to show you, and you'll see why. The color is phenomenal, and the background, the back fabric is so unusual also. Our question. Joseph Church. I took back roads to get there. It's down towards Boyertown.
The reason I'm asking, we have Moyer relatives that live
Okay.
in several farms up in that area.
Are you part of the trust? No.
There was a Moyer trust that was set up.
Yeah, it was Moyer Family Trust, and his name was Harvey Moyer. And the wife was Anne. So
Anyway,
that's really all we can.
and 2
So
of them
the Irish chain was the first one.
Before.
All right, this is again like the first one, circa 1890, and it's called the Sugar Cone. And again, another one that came from that Moyer Family Trust, made by Emma Reichert Bechtel for Anna, who was a wife to Harvey. But the toile fabric on the back, isn't that stunning?
So unusual to see that on a Pennsylvania German quilt.
I would take a bolt of that.
Mhm.
Were all of these made on big frames and?
I would assume
Oh,
so.
we don't want to figure it out. I'm sorry. We got messed up here.
Well, when he goes to auctions, there's so many that are available for buying and nobody wants them. So I'm going to say yes. I think they had quilting frames. They used to pull them up into the ceiling. So they'd be out of the way, so they could still have their family gatherings or they could feed their family. Just, all right, this is Devil's Puzzle, again, circa 1890, and from the same trust.
And the back is a beautiful brown printed fabric.
And this one has the front rolled to the back for the binding. And as they say, get one. Okay.
Okay, we're coming to the end here, so. This one, unbelievable. The fabrics that were used, it's just blows my mind. The border, and again, the use of that blue, it just makes the quilt pop colors.
So this is a rolling stone, and oftentimes the center block would be a lighter color, a plain, where names would go on, to do the inscriptions. Again, it was the same trust,
Flip it.
but the backing is
I
wild.
have to see the backing.
Now that is the design of the fabric. Some people call it cheater cloth. I call it opportunity cloth. But again, stunning.
We have two special quilts that are really not part of this, but they're local, and I think maybe of interest. This, I'll let Pat talk about.
It's kind of a simple design. We were at a seminar and they had a little auction. I think it was a silent auction. And we bid on this and we got it. And the reason we wanted it, because it said Berks Bicentennial Richmond Elementary, which is out of Fleetwood, 1975, 1976. And there was a label on it, and it said the project was done by 50 fourth grade students while studying history of Berks County. And they were taught how to embroider. One of the blocks said, "I love Miss Heiser." So I went to the Fleetwood School District to find out who was Mrs. Heiser, or Miss Heiser. Had she gotten married since then, that the name is different? Well, the elementary school where all these records were kept closed, and no one knew where the records were. All these yearbooks that would have given me these names, and I really tried my darndest to get information on it, and what I gave you is all I could get. So I'm hoping, did anyone here go to school and know a Mrs. Heiser or Miss Heiser?
You check with the Fleetwood Art Society, they have a lot of yearbooks.
Now wait, where would I go?
Fleetwood Historical.
Okay, I'll check there. I know, every time I try to call, they're not there, so okay, I will try that. I went to the library thinking maybe they gave it to the library, but there was nothing there. Okay, thank you. All right, here is an embroidered historical quilt made by the Women's Club of Lincoln Park. This is the one that has the knife edge binding where you take the front to the back and just kind of whip stitch it. I won't go over all of them, but the four corners has the eagle and the shield. You have the pagoda, you have the Berks map, Daniel Boone, iron furnace. Yeah, can you see them?
Yeah.
Really? No, okay, then I don't have, because they're written out. So,
I had never seen this before.
well, I think it's one of a kind. But there again, I could.
As far as I know, it's the only one that I know that's been made. This one I think will be of interest to the Historical Society in Reading.
Okay, we actually went to, it was an antique quilt sale up in Kempton. And one of the dealer that we often dealt with, she said that there's a dealer down the aisle. Just before, you go there, don't you? Have I seen you there?
Yes.
Yes, because we bought a quilt from you that was at the Allentown Art, yeah. Well, at any rate, that's another story. But she said, I know someone that might be interested. So we put it in a chest so nobody would see it. So he brought it out and right away we said, we just have to have this. So it's a bicentennial quilt for Reading and made in 1948. But again,
A
stunning.
little bit. I'm at the steps. I'm good.
This is what you call a scalloped edging. I do want to make note that that time period, they also had a plate, which I didn't bring it along, but we have one in our cabinet at home. But the plate has the same emblem as in the center of this quilt. And the potter that made that was Vernon Kills. I think he was from California. He wasn't from here. Yes.
Heavy. Just hold it this way. They can.
It has the distal things in it. Very Dutchy.
That's it.
Well, I'd like to thank our holders and folders, but I would like to end with something that came with this plate when I found the information. It just said Historic Reading, PA Bicentennial Collector Plate, Reading, located in the heart of Berks, of the heart of Pennsylvania Dutch County, was first planned in 1748 and became the county seat of Berks in 1752. And this is what was endearing to my heart. Greater Reading, with its highly diversified industries, produces all the essentials of life, yet the greatest attribute of Reading and Berks County is the heart of the people. Thank you.
Unless there are other questions,
You're welcome to come up and look at the dress closely or her shawls, and he can have this omak out if you want to linger longer, unless they're going to kick you out.
Is to describe how large your collection is and how you store it.
There you go. That's yours.
well, we tell people we have over 1,000 quilts. It varies from week to week because we are selling some and we're buying. But they are in a very secure location and also temperature control. They do not see any light of day, and we have them on commercial shelving and draped, so there's no air going through, no dust. And like I say, it is temperature controlled, so.
And a sign that says varmints not allowed in.
Another question. So I know that there's probably some sort of wadding in between all of those quilts. Like they just seem so thin. So what's the type of material that was used?
Well, for the most part, it was commercial batting, because that was introduced in 1846 already by Stearns and Foster, who does Mountain Mist today. They've lasted a long time, so.
With some of the earlier quilts, we have a pretty good collection of quilts prior to the 1850s, real early. When you hold them up, those would have been hand carded. You can see the residue of and sometimes seeds of the cotton in there. And if there's seeds in it, the brown will bleed through the muslin.
They stain.
Yeah, stains it. But they would sometimes hand card their own. But some of them, it's unusual that they don't have batting. We have some quilts that actually have a quilt inside. They used what they had. And the one lecture we just gave earlier in the week, the one woman said that they had paper in as batting. So you know, they used what they had, especially in the early years.
And the only time I've seen paper in ones that we have were incomplete, and it was usually on the backing of hexagons. They used that as their pattern. That would be a rustling, wouldn't it?
You don't get them wet.
Yeah, no?
And the quilts I've used seen haven't been, for the most part, laundered. So that's another indication they weren't used and they were their heirloom quilts. I know that the woman had asked again on Tuesday at the lecture, why we didn't have any of the scrappy quilts. And I said, we have them, but they're not that pretty to show, because they were used. They were made to be used and a lot of them didn't survive.
We do obtain quilts that aren't pristine, but oftentimes we just love the pattern. And since I do reproduce, sometimes I'll see an applique pattern and on a quilt that's really beat up and falling apart. But we'll try to get that one as well, so I can do my creative stitching. Oh, I need another lifetime. That's all I have to say.
And for those of you that have seen our quilts, and we had quilts before, we did the Hershey Quilt Odyssey show, the antique exhibit for 9 years. Last year, for the first year, we did the Lancaster Lebanon show, the antique exhibit. Those were our cheddar quilts. It's in March. We did it again this year in March. Those were the
American Pride.
American Pride. We have 3 publications. These were publications that we did with the Hershey show that are available. American Pride, which is the quilts that we're showing this year because of the 250th year. We're trying to come up with programming built around that. And this, we call this American Pride Berks County. We just did one in American Pride, Pennsylvania. We also, American applique quilts. Again, typically most of these, the heyday of applique was the 1850s. So a lot of the red, white, the red,
Green, red and green.
yellow, red and green quilts were in that period, 1840s, up through the Civil War. The first exhibit we ever did was at the Kutztown
Historical
Historical
Society.
Society, 2009, and we call it the Art of the Needle. These were all Pennsylvania quilts from the 1800s.
What he's trying to tell you is they're for sale.
We have them if you're interested, so.
And, Berks, you know, it's the black.
Very few, very few.
I was told, I didn't really talk about the Amish. They were the last to become quilters. Often when we go someplace, especially out of state, say, well, here come the Amish quilts. They here from Pennsylvania. And I said, no, we don't, I don't collect them, but I have a couple, half dozen maybe, and rarely do we show them.
Well, one of the problems is their styles and the choice of fabrics have not changed. So it's very difficult to tell whether or not a dealer is selling one from the turn of the century or one that was made in 1950. So it's difficult to.
And they were very expensive. I thought overpriced. Now they've since come down. They're more affordable now. But yeah, you couldn't tell in looking at one if it's 100 years old or not. But if you ever see Amish quilts, typically I'm talking Lancaster Amish because they had their own unique style as compared to the Ohio and Indiana Amish. That changed as they moved west. But what was I going to say?
I don't know. I get in your mind sometimes, but not always.
You typically don't see too many prior to 1920. If we see an exhibit, they had an exhibit down in Lancaster, Amish quilts, and most of those 1820s through the 40s, 50s, and the 20th century quilts, because they were not quilters. They were the last to start quilting.
Anything else? You got us now.
The Pennsylvania Germans typically hold on to what they do for a longer period of time. So when the pastel colors from the Germans when they lost World War One, had to give up those dyes in the early 1900s. The English gravitated right away and used those dyes, and that's where you see the Marie Webster's and those design pattern quilts. But the Germans typically didn't follow right away. They still hung on to these colors into the early 1900s. But once 1915 and 20, it was done, lost. They didn't go for this bold colors and designs. They were starting by the patterns what the English people were doing. And so you can't tell if it's, Pennsylvania German or not. Yeah.
That's, I didn't see the crazy quilts. What was the time period? Were they popular? Does it?
Crazy quilts would have been the turn of the century, the end of the 18 into the early 1900s. And they were made mainly for parlor quilts, they call them. Not necessarily a bed cover. It would be more to decorate because they would put all these fancy stitching on it. So they were oftentimes called parlor quilts.
Pennsylvania German crazy quilts that we've seen.
Well, now those are
Would
crazy.
have been early 1900s, and they were thick comforters,
Yeah.
very heavy. As compared to what the English were doing. And that all came about because of the quilt show, and was it Chicago or some Philadelphia, I guess. The Japanese that brought their style over, and that's where they got that from.
Yeah. And when you find a crazy quilt today, they used silk, velvet, and the silk tends to deteriorate. So you got a lot of fracturing in the silk fabric. And it's hard to repair that. I try to stay away from things that I have to repair. So.
Good question.
And I wanted to ask you, like, what inspired you to start what transpired?
It was quite an accident.
That's a quilter. But the history, we were 30 years ago studying the Civil War. We were interested in the Civil War.
The history.
And I drove her all over to the battlefields on the East Coast. And
our daughter went to college, and I had empty nest syndrome, and he didn't want me to feel miserable, so he drugged me through the battlefields.
and she was interested in what the women were doing.
Yeah.
And that, we didn't realize that the fabrics and that quilts were being made back then. Actually, the first old quilt we bought from the 1800s, we were at an antique place, and it was
Adamstown.
a star quilt that was around 1870s.
Nope. Yep. Go ahead.
No, I'm done.
But I think you're right. I think it was 1874, but it had a hole in it, but I loved it, but we didn't buy it. We left, and in Adamstown, everybody wants cash. So we were paying cash, and we decided to stop just to see if it was still there. If you look at something and you leave and you come back and it's still there, what do you think? It was meant for me. So, but we didn't have any cash. He wouldn't take a check, and he wouldn't take a credit card. So I thought, oh, great. Now, our friend who we had gone with was out in the parking lot. So I went out to see if I could borrow some money to buy this quilt.
Well, you told the guy to wait a minute. I'll be right
Yeah,
back.
I'll be right back. When I came back, I had money in my hand, and he said, where did you get this? I said, some guy out in the parking lot. That's true. And I never explained. Let him think whatever he wanted to think. So
What year was that?
that we bought that one, that would have been the beginning, the very beginning.
Well, we started collecting right after 9/11. I had lost my retirement account. I'm self-employed, and the stock market all but collapsed in 2000.
So the money he had left, he put into credits.
So we started buying textiles, and then when the banks were collapsing in 2008, I lost the rest of it. I said, that's it, I'm buying quilts. And then we really started to get into the buying of
The
it.
problem is, okay, it's 401(k),
Yeah.
but we don't want to part with any of them. Oh, but the day may come that we might have to. Yeah.
We are selling off quilts that we bought earlier. We thought they were the nice quilts, but our inventory has gotten better. And So those quilts have to go to make room for the pretty quilts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for coming. This was fun. We enjoyed sharing.